After 2 years in the West End and well over 500 shows, you learn a few things. Not often do you get the chance to actually talk to people who do this, who do it for an extended period of time. I don't do it anymore. I'll occasionally dip in on a show, but I don't have a chair anymore. And we'll go through some of the reasons as to why I left. Here's what you won't get told as much in music school or from your one or two sittings at the pit. First point, it's much easier to get work when you have work. Okay, it's much easier to get work when you have work. What does this mean? When you've got a gig, especially when you've got like a West End chair and stuff, it is so much easier to get more gigs. This is something I noticed and I kind of went through, where once I had the chair and people realised I had, even though it was the smallest show at the time in the West End, it was still something that people were interested in. You know, I found other musicians from other shows in town would pay more attention. You know, they'd be interested, especially at the pub mid-show, because people tend to go to the pub between mid-show, before show, after show, musicians on the different shows and stuff, and network and link up there. And it's a lot easier. You don't have to prove anything or prove a lot when you have a chair in the West End so much. People just go, oh, okay, cool, they're on that show. Take that with a pinch of salt. But for the most part, that's true, and there will be new doors that open because you've got that seat and stuff, and even to the point where other musicians would consider doing a show swap with you or depping in on your stuff just for a break. And like, if you then get other people in to sit in on your show, you know, they often return the favor, and that then opens up a whole new network of things, which we'll talk about then. Because from doing that show and from realizing I had that show, an old acquaintance of mine reached out to Depp on a show that he was on, Little Big Things at the time it was. So I depped on a couple shows there, and man, let me tell you now, this can count as its own point as well. Depping on a theatre show is a roast, especially in the West End, because there are no rehearsals for this. You'll have a sit-in, but nothing can quite prepare you for sitting down in the show with the audience who have paid however much they paid to come and see it, and you've got the sheet music in front of you and you've got the cues. You know, even if you've learnt the show, you've got the different pauses, the different lines. There's so many different articulations and kind of breaths and cues that are coming from a line in the show, then cued by the MD. So you need to be able to see your music, but also see the MD and know exactly where you're going. Make sure you get the right tones, the right sounds. If there's switches on stuff, it's a lot. But the point is, I got that show Depp because I was already on on another show. And then from doing well on there, I did a couple more Deps there, and also Depped for this same bass player on the Live Aid musical that's currently in town. So just for one day is what it's called. All of that was off the back of doing that first show, and had I not had that show, that work may not have come about. Okay. Secondly, it's people want to feel something. Okay, this live music world, this live performance world, people want to feel something. As much as AI is a whole thing right now and it will have its space, people want a real experience and they want to feel emotion. So if you can help them do that, there's always going to be a market for that. Okay, next point. Saying yes means saying no. Now, this is one of my biggest lessons with West End, because essentially they're a unicorn gig where there are virtually no other gigs where by taking on that gig for the next 6 to 12 months, more like 9 typically, every weekend and week evening is booked up, bar 1 day a week. You know, by default, the baseline was, from when I said yes at that contract, I was busy for every weekend and evening. It's not that you couldn't get time off. It's hard to get time off, or you need the right depths. You need depths in place to get time off. And even when you are off and have it covered, there's always that element of, you know, if that person doesn't turn up, something needs to be sorted. Now, in theory, there should be fixers that help you with that sort of thing, but it's a whole thing. And ultimately, the chair is your responsibility. So in order for you to be able to take time off, kind of more as and when you want it, you need to have your chair in order and your depths in order, ready to fulfill those spots. Because the more difficult you make it for that show to continue smoothly, is the harder it will be for you to get that time off approved. And then a lot of shows have certain rules in place, understandably so, about how many people can be off at once. And then there's all things about magnitude of, whether it's a regular dep who they knows the show really well, then it's less of a problem. But it's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. And yeah, by saying yes to something like that, you're instantly working from you're busy, and then you're trying to work backwards from there for any kind of social, holiday, business, or other stuff that goes on. So it's a big pro and a big con, where you're busy, but man, you're doing the same show. And we'll get onto that. The next point is learning to read music opens doors. Now, I came from a learning to play in church background, which all by ear, and I didn't learn to read sheet music, bass clef, until I was at uni, essentially. And well, the diploma program after GCSEs, after 16. And so I was playing big time catch up. But a lot of people, especially from the gospel world, and even just the general church world, they don't bother to learn music because they don't need to. And that's true. But having access to, my reading is not good. My reading is not strong, but it was enough to get me through. It was enough for me to learn from a sheet of music and kind of pick up bits as and well, and then using my ear to fill in the gaps. And we'll get there too, man. Sometimes you got to jump before you're ready. But it opened up so many doors for me, having that basic reading ability, for one, being able even to do this West End stuff. But before the West End, there was TV work with CBeebies. So my first theatre gig was playing for the recorded pantomimes for a UK kids TV station called CBeebies. And every year they do this Christmas show where the stars of the show come together and film this panto that has a live audience and then gets recorded and aired for TV. I also found out from that point onwards, that was one of my first professional gigs out of music uni, and I found out that media contracts can be a lot more financially rewarding than everything else. And again, without a basic knowledge of music, that door wouldn't have been as accessible to me. And off the back of that, I've then been able to do more TV-based band stuff and house band stuff, where I was in the house band for TV show, kids show, Yolanda's Band Jam, which has won various TV awards, and then later on did the house band for the Paralympics homecoming for the Team GB athletes that was funded by the National Lottery, that aired on Channel 4. And it's like all of this stuff, it's been like, I'm very blessed and grateful for these opportunities, but those doors were open because I had taken up the suggestion to learn more of the reading, and I'm going to pick up my sight reading to get to a point where I would love to get to a point where I can just, anything you put in front of me, away and play. That's because again, it just opens doors and makes so many more things accessible to you. Okay. Next point, the audience probably won't notice your mistakes. Now, take this with a pinch of salt. Okay, I'm talking about from the point of you're at a skill level enough to get this job in the first place, but this will apply for even like small bands, local stuff, and church as well. The audience, we beat ourselves up with mistakes. I didn't play that bar quite right. This, but more times than not, the audience don't notice. They really don't notice unless you make it obvious that you've made a mistake. So if you make a mistake, don't make it obvious. The flip side to that is, in the theatre world, 9 times out of 10, that MD is picking up on that, and it's very precise, the feedback that you'll get on some of those notes, which is good. It's once you're learning the show and stuff, it's a good challenge for developing accuracy and precision. Okay. And the next point is you miss a lot of life. Doing or being in a Western show, you miss a lot of life. To make it clear, to give you a perfect example, right? If I wanted to go and see my family, spend a Saturday or two with my family, which was like a hour or two's journey away. In order for me to have that off, I might have to, if I wanted to, essentially 2 days off, I would have to dep out half the week's work because our shows were structured where our double show days, we had 8 shows a week for a start. Let's start there. 8 shows a week, which meant 2 days a week, we had 2 shows. So for us, Friday had 2 shows, Saturday had 2 shows. So if I had an event or like a family function or something, I had to dep out at least 2 shows for a day because that stuff almost always happens on a Friday or Saturday. And if I want like a day to recover, that was 4 shows. That was half my week's pay that I had to lose to see my family because everyone is busy. When you're available, your hours are essentially flipped. Your kind of free time is between 9 and 2 p.m., 9 a.m., and then evenings and weekends are all taken by shows. Or anything you do has to basically be in or around central London or within London, which is fine if your entire network and stuff is in London, but my family weren't. And a lot of my friends and acquaintances and stuff were dotted about. So that was difficult. I missed a lot of life. A lot of my kind of home friends back in Reading and stuff were when parties and celebrations and barbecues were happening. I was working, and if I was going to get there, by the time I got there, it would have been midnight, which was beyond the point, and I had to then get back for a matinee show the next day. So it just wasn't worth it. And that counts for a lot. Ironically, a lot of those guys are now in London, and I could have done more of that stuff, but I have a family now, which is a completely different story. Okay, next point. Real human interaction will always have an audience. Live performance isn't going to go anywhere. Maybe how we monetize, where we monetize, what it pays, who those sorts of gigs and bookings come from will change and shift, but that's not going anywhere. I'm not concerned about the live performance industry. It might shift how it looks, but there's going to be something solid there for a very long time, and it will probably go up along with AI and tech development and all of that because people are going to crave real connection. This is what we saw out of COVID, where people went absolutely insane for the theatre shows when it all opened up again because they just weren't able to see live stuff, be in a room with people. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Next point, movement is medicine. When you spend a lot of time in a dark room for work, in the pits under the shows, having that regular schedule of movement, of exercise, going to the gym, that really did a lot for mental state, for physical state, and I would probably say I was in the best shape I was in whilst doing that show just because I had such a locked in routine, which is something that I'll get back to. Okay, next point. Word of mouth is the best recommendation. Again, leading to what I said about it's easier to work. When you have someone that recommends you, you bypass all of this initial, I'll audition for this, send for this, all of that. And sometimes maybe you'll still have to do an audition, but it's very different to do an audition off the back of someone who that hire respects their opinion of and goes, you should check out this guy would do a great job. That's a completely different ball game to coming in as a complete stranger that no one knows. You're already steps above, and it's just a lot easier and quicker to get work that way. So I've learned to focus on trying to extend that side of things, doing a good job too, and being a nice person, a good person to be around to get more of that word of mouth. You need a hobby. It's the next point. When you do something so routine and in and out, day in, day out, week after week, you need a hobby, man. You need to do something outside of what that is, or you're gonna drive yourself crazy. So for me, it was a bit of gym at the time. To be honest, I'm kind of shifting now to try and find more of that. I was just in a grind state right now, but I would have benefited from having another hobby. And that's something I'm kind of pursuing and looking into now, which is a conversation for another day. The next point is you get used to it quickly. You get used to it really quickly. At first, it was really exciting doing the shows, a bit of a buzz. We had an onstage band for some of it, and there was that initial buzz. And then by about 4 or 5 months in, it's very much here we go again. Right? Yeah, people laugh at the same bits most of the time. You're like, all right, I've heard this joke. When you've literally heard the joke 200 times already, yeah, cue that joke, cue that laugh. Oh, here we go. You get used to it quickly, and it can quickly and easily become a job. So it's trying to be grateful for the opportunity you have, whilst still trying to find areas and pockets to have your fun. Which leads me on to the next point. Good friends and family are priceless, because in these long, boring moments and repetitive times, having those people you can speak to, go for food with, and stuff outside of work really makes a difference in refreshing you and keeping you sane. Especially towards the end, doing the same thing over and over again can drive you crazy. At least it did for me. It's when you know the next day is going to be the same as the last 4 months, and you've got another 6 months of that. That can mess with you in the head, and you're just like, right, okay, well, I know what to expect here. You try and find new things, but this is why I think there's can be such a drinking culture within some of the West End stuff. There can be such a substance abuse within performers and stuff like that, because regardless of how you feel, regardless of what's going on, you got to get on stage and give that performance. You just have to get through it, and that's one way a lot of people get through it. But yeah, you have to find, whether that's show depths, switching out, making sure you do take the time off and doing something different. You have to find a way to work through that and work around that. Next point would be to jump in before you're ready. I got the call for this show in October in lockdown when they were filming a promo, because the show was going on a cruise line. They had budget to film a big fancy promo for it so that the cruise line could help drum up new business for when the cruises are going back. So we did that. I was on base on that. And then the following March, they're like, right, we got an opportunity to go to America for 4 months. Are you up for it? Oh, by the way, those 2 or 3 of those songs are going to be on Upright. Can you do it? The answer was yes. Was my Upright playing up to scratch? No. It's where it needs to be now. But at the time, I was like, I don't even have an Upright. So what I did was, and they were aware. It wasn't like I was saying I'm an amazing Upright player and then took it. But I'm like, yeah, we'll get that going. We can handle those songs. So I borrowed a friend's Upright. Shout out Aidan for lending me an Upright bass for a month. Chopping away as much as I can, get the stuff down, and we held it down on the gig. I got a flare up of tendonitis in the first 2 weeks of the show, because my technique wasn't there, and I made some adjustments and all of that, and we got better. But that was the result of jumping in. In that process of that month of learning the songs for the show, I had a film. Extra part for a film come up that needed. It was like wartime based, in I think early 1900s, and they needed upright bass player within it. And I'm like, yeah, I got you. I got the upright bass too. So got hired for that. We did that show. That ended up being Masters of the Air. My scene didn't make it, but we still got paid. So we will take it again. And all of this for jumping in. If I hadn't have done that, that wouldn't have happened. The next point is to be adaptable and be a problem solver. This stuff doesn't go to plan. Stuff goes wrong. Someone gets injured mid show, and the cue that's supposed to happen doesn't happen. you have to pick up. Maybe someone plays and jumps ahead somewhere else in the song on stage. And what do you do at that point? You know, you have to be ready to be quick, adaptable, and problem solve. And, you know, in this particular show, Choir of Man, I held the role of, we called it band captain, because there was an MD, a musical supervisor, and an MD, but they weren't on stage, they weren't playing. So what happened, what that meant was, when things went wrong, or if things changed and happened on stage, there wasn't that line of communication for stuff to happen. So I suggested, right, we need someone on stage, we need someone within the band that has a mic that can talk to sound and talk to the rest of the band, so everyone is on the same page musically if stuff like this happens. And that's what we ended up doing. And, you know, that was an extra bump on my weekly pay there for doing that. And that was kind of part of the benefit of being adaptable. And there were many problems and potential show stops that we were able to avoid because that happened, because we put that in place. You know, it's all of those things there. So what else do I have to share? Having a stable routine can get you in the best shape. With something like this, every week is the same. More time than ever, for the most part, every week is the same. So we just got into a killer routine of go to the gym and sauna and pool before show, do the show, go sauna, gym before show, eat, do the show. We probably did that like 4 or 5 times a week, and that you know, we were that was a good time in terms of like health, in terms of, you know, feeling good and kind of making progress in the gym, stuff like that, which we're getting back to. But yeah, having a stable routine, if you take advantage of it, can help you get in the best shape. And lastly, final point would be listen to your gut. You know, in my experience, whenever I've gone against my gut, okay, my intuition, my discernment of spirit, okay, I'm talking about God, Holy Spirit here, but you know, it's whenever you go against that, you have to listen, man. Whenever I've gone against that, it's not worked well. It has not worked out well. So you have to listen to that. And I felt the pull that it was time for me to leave, because that was no longer where I was supposed to be. And you know, that was the right decision. You know, so this is my experience of this. There will be things within this that will be helpful to everyone, but let me know what your experience has been with work with some of these points, maybe your experiences that you can relate to within this in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.